Usman, GSP. The topic I do not want to die. The topic, if I have any say between my window sheen and my two viewers to keep alive for right now is going to be that one. And it's for all of the wrong reasons. None of the reasons that you would think. It brings me an evil pleasure to see people this irritated by not succeeding in their argument. If you take GSP side, right? Certain part. If you take Usman's side, right? Certain part. Now, you got to imagine though, and don't forget, when they finally switch, I'm going to get that same evil pleasure from all of the people that were on George's side now not getting their way. And I'm going to get evil play, right? I mean, you see where this gets fun or stays fun from an agitator like me? No. We can't figure it out. We can't prove it. Because George is not going to fight Usman. And if George did fight Usman, they would build into the story ahead of time that this isn't the same George that it once was, so that Usman can't get his full credit, right? I mean, it's impossible. That's why it's so annoying. That's why I was very proud of Usman when Usman's handling it like this. Just talk to me about something else. Just that silly, talk to me about something else. That's all Usman can do. But I would imagine if you were in George's spot, you're not competing anymore, that's probably a pretty damn good feeling. You may not admit it publicly, but if you could keep it alive and there is a debate and you're still winning the debate, that probably feels pretty good. That's called legacy. That's what George is living in right now. Kamaru is living as champion of the world. George is living as an icon. You don't feel bad for either one of them, but they are different. Now, how are we going to decide this? If we can't get George and Kamaru in there, we just can't do it. How are we going to decide it? Here's what we do. We go to the next best thing, which is we're going to go to Kamaru's hardest fight, which is Colby Covington, against George's hardest fight, which is Johnny Hendricks. And then we're going to figure out who's better between Johnny Hendricks and Colby Covington. Problem. We can't do it. Johnny's not competing anymore. Okay. We're going to go to another variable. We're going to go to the night that they won the championship. So we're going to take Matt Hughes and we're going to put him against Tyron Woodley. One problem. We can't do it. They're not fighting anymore. What do we do? How can we possibly get this done? But you see where that gets to be fun. And then moreover, who decides? Right now, it's the populace, right? I don't actually know what that vote is. I think it's about 80-20 lean towards George. I can't prove that. That just means my sphere. It means the people I talk to, it's about 8 out of 10. Used to be 10 out of 10, went to 9, now it's 8. I mean, it's going. If this thing keeps going, Kamaru Usman is eventually going to win this thing. But who says? Who says? And it's a little less sophisticated than you might think. It won't be all of humanity. It won't be the 6 billion people on Earth that all take a vote like a democracy. It's going to be a Joe Rogan. It's going to be a John Anik. It's going to be an Errol Hawani. It's going to be a Brett Okamoto. I mean, these are your voices within the sport that influence and decide. And for the most part, they either stay out of it or they're all going with George. But they usually do it the same way that I do, which is the right answer right now is George. But it doesn't mean that's going to stay true forever. Usman is closing in. George had 3 things, and they were very unique to George. George had beat everybody of yesteryear. That's how he became the #1 contender. He beat everybody of his time, and then he did it a second time over. That's called being the world champion. But then the guys that George beat, and Johnny Hendricks specifically, when George stepped aside, grabbed the belt, and ran with it. It's one of the things for Khabib that is going to come back and be a real thing that Khabib has to deal with, right? Now, you don't feel bad for these guys. These guys are all remembered incredibly. You just wonder if they're remembered and as fond of as they deserve to be. One thing that would be great for Khabib, I don't think Khabib sees this. One thing that would be great for Khabib is if somebody, Poirier comes to mind, Gaethje comes to mind, somebody that Khabib ran into and defeated goes and grabs the belt and represents the new era. Right now, it's a problem. 3 months ago, we're discussing the greatest of all time. Is it Khabib or George? We're not now. We're not. We're discussing, is it George or is it Usman? And that's in 3 months. In 3 months, Khabib came out of that. One of the things that is going against Khabib doesn't know this. Khabib doesn't have to care about this. But one thing that is happening, if he would psychologically be interested in it, is the guy that's got the belt right now is not one of the guys that Khabib went through. And the guy that's got the belt right now, who's right now ahead of the guys that Khabib did go through, was at the same time as Khabib and they didn't compete. That's very different than if you have a new era. You have a new wave of guys. You have a new signing who wasn't even around. When the guy was around and the fight just didn't happen, and now he's the champion, and the guys that you beat, he beat too, but you never locked up with him, it just becomes a problem. It's silly. I probably confused you. But if you want to see something look really good for Khabib, and this is why I bring George St-Pierre, and this is why nobody can beat him in the argument. George got matched up with the guys of yesterday. The BJ Penns of the world, the Gil Castillos of the world, the Frank Triggs of the world. He got matched up with them. Sean Shirk comes to mind. He got matched up with them. You can't force your matchups, but he did. He then was good enough to become world champion and not only clean out the roster, clean it out for a second time. And then by coincidence, one of the guys that he beat, Johnny Hendricks, went on and had his own run in the new era. You could do everything right. You could do everything that George did and sign up for the fights and have a really great record and even get a shiny belt around your waist. But if you didn't have those three things, you can't beat him in the argument. That's where it's tough. So when Usman finally does step aside after he beats the hell out of the division, not only once, it looks like Usman's go ahead and give everybody an ass whipping twice. He then has to cross his fingers and hope to the moon and stars above that one of the guys that he beat is still good enough to go on and grab the belt and run off, or he doesn't tie George. See where it becomes a problem? That's the same thing that's happening to Khabib. Khabib was in the discussion 3 months ago. He's been removed. Now, if Gaethje and or Poirier go out and smash Oliveira and they go through the Chandlers, they go through these brand new guys and they go on and have a run, boom, that light is right back on Khabib. It's going to be interesting. You can't plan it that way. It just happens. You can't just get matched up with the top guys and become a number one contender. You can't just be the best and clean out a division and do it twice over. You can't just come back and even get an opportunity to go into a different weight class and have a champ thing. You can't control if one of the guys that you beat is good enough to reclaim the vacant title and have his... You can't. These things are outside of your control, but when they happen, there will be spotlight, and that spotlight will only be on you. And I'm sharing with you because there will be a voice that will decide this and that will influence it. And again, Ariel, Brett, John Anik, Joe Rogan. Because it won't be me. In all fairness, I'm going to sit this one out. I feel that I have laid out my case. I feel that I have made my opinion known and why I have that opinion. But it would be helpful. We're going to be in fantasy land. That's an interesting fantasy fight. Prime Johnny Hendricks versus right now Colby Covington. Prime Matt Hughes, right? Versus prime Tyron Woodley. I have always wished they would play this sport to third. There's even been tournaments. Pride used to do tournament. Coker does tournaments. I would love to see them play it to third. The two semifinalists that win go on and fight for the title, but the two that lose come back and fight. We get a gold, we get a silver, we get a bronze. I like it. I understand it. Before you tell me, and this is the only argument against me when I say this, no other sport does that. Every sport would do it if they could figure out how to pull it off. You think the NFL wanted like one more mega game for the bronze? You think the NBA wanted like one more mega playoff and it's going to be for the bronze? Of course they would. Everybody understands it. Not just the NCAA and just the Olympics. Everybody gets it. This is my wish. I'm not going to get my way. But these are the things that you would have to have in place so that you can get some clarity to the argument. Argument's a very interesting one. And if you're going to convince the Ariel, the Rogan, the Anik, the Akamoto, if you're going to convince one of the guys who's going to use their mega platform and all their credibility and come out and say definitively, it has changed. Kamaru Usman has passed him up. And here's why you're going to have to satisfy a counter to the argument that I just made, which is 3 different eras. 3 different eras controlled by George. And Khabib can end up back in that argument. But he needs Charlie Olives to drop the strap to somebody that he beat.